Okay, so now let's look at if that pesky check engine light doesn't work, right? If it's out, boy, that's a wonderful time, but not if it's supposed to work and it's out, right? If it's out because it's broke, that's different. And maybe it's broke because you decided to drive with your check engine light on for 3.5 years. Okay, so let's determine if it's good without having to do any testing at all. Well, let's look. PCM right here, right? We got fuses that go into the PCM over here. We have our malfunction indicator lamp, service engine soon light right there, right? Notice, what is it? It's an LED, right? That's an LED. It's a diode with light coming out of it. So let's see what we got, right? We got our mid-bus electrical center, MBEC. Over here, you got your instrument cluster over here. So this is our cluster. There's your Prundle. There's your logic, right? So that's where you have basically a computer board that's got chips in it that is the thinking that it works with. So if we look, we've got a fuse. A fuse feeds the instrument cluster. The fuse also goes and feeds the powertrain. And if we notice, again, we have a transistor driver that pulls it to ground. So here we've got ground going to the relay. I mean the LED. And the other half of it is what? Power. So now we go into the scan tool, we pick MIL control, and we turn it on. And boop, light turns on. Great. Now we know that it works, right? Why is it not working? I don't know, but it lights up, so it's able to function. Maybe there's a problem with the cluster. Now, maybe there's not a problem with the cluster. Maybe it comes down to who knows? If it lights up, it's good. Simple as that. If it lights up, it's good. Why is it not coming on? Because there's nothing wrong with the car. That's why. No. Every time you turn the key on, it should come on. Being able to do that lets us know it has the ability to work. Now, let's say we did that and it didn't come on. Well, now we got some testing to do. We have to look at that wire coming out and see if it's being grounded. We've got to check this fuse to see if it's powered. And next step, we're going into that cluster and we're going to that little LED bulb and we're seeing what's present right at it. Maybe it is faulty. Let's kick that one out and let's go to our next one, right? We got two things on this one. We're going to look at it in two ways. One, fuel pump doesn't turn on. Well, what can we do? Well, we can sit down and we could hook up a fuel pressure gauge, right? And we turn the key and nothing happens. Is it a fuel pump? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? But let's go and hit the button and see what happens. So here we got our powertrain control module. It's right here. Here's our fuel pump relay. Here's our fuel pump. Let's take a look what we have going on. So we have the computer fuel pump control feeding one side of that, right? So what is it? What do we know? Well, the other side goes to ground. Therefore, this thing is supplying what? 12 volts. Over here, we have hot at all times. We have ECMB fuse feeding 30. And ultimately, it comes down and feeds the fuel pump. Now, remember that prime connector I keep telling you about? Here we can sit down and we can run power to it and turn the fuel pump on. So we actually have another way to do it. We just have to figure out where that prime connector is. But anyway, we take it. We go into bi-directional controls for fuel pump. We turn it on. The magnet in here gets energized. That power flows down and fuel pump turns on. If we have a gauge, we can see the pressure at the same time, right? So what's that prove? That proves this relay is good, this computer's good, this fuse is good, this ground is good, this ground is good. All of that from just being able to turn it on with a scan tool. Pretty cool, right? All right. Well, we're here on this screen, so we're going to do something else. Because notice that we have the fuel level sensor here. Right? So what do you think the fuel level sensor communicates with? The fuel gauge. Can't believe you didn't know that. Right? So if we look, we have our rheostat, right? 2 wires going to that. One of them is our ground, sensor return, and the other one is a signal into the PCM. Right? Now, the PCM needs to take that information and get it into the instrument cluster somehow, right? So we have, in the PCM, we have information lines that feed around. Well, if we go, let me check my map here. And I see that this next to last one here is our fuel gauge. That's why I got my map. So here's our fuel gauge. We look at this side. This is the same for all of these. This other side comes down here to the same bottom as all of these. Right? So this is ground, and this is control, power going here. But notice that the fuel gauge comes from logic land. Right? So this is the computer hardware within the instrument cluster that goes with it. Well, we see that we have our PCM over here that feeds in for our attack and vehicle speed. Over here we got body control stuff, and we have our MBEC center over here, and we have somewhere here we got data lines. Somewhere, who knows where, but they're here someplace, and that's what ultimately talks to that. If we go over here, we can see here is our body control. Here's our PCM. Here's our instrument cluster. All of that is shared on the same data lines, which also comes out here in our data link connector. Right? So here's another great thing, and we'll go back to this one. Gas gauge doesn't work. Well, is it the sending unit? Is it the instrument cluster? Is it the data lines? Well, we can go on this, and for the fuel gauge, we can increase it by percentage. And we can automatically do it with the scan tool. Go up 10%, 12%, 13, 20, 30, 40, 50%, make it sweep. What's that prove? That proves that the motor in the instrument cluster is good. All the pieces that are between that information stuff and things like that, good. So now we would have to go and check the fuel level sensor, which is right here, because we know that everything is proper up at the instrument cluster. Kind of neat, right?